what I'm particularly interested in is like to see the variety of actions that you have in Helen's works, like the actions that she performs. Most of the time for the video camera, but sometimes live in front of an audience as well. And I find it particularly striking how much walking is involved in Helen's videos. You see her walking in forests, on the beach, on mountains, and that makes me think that often her videos or her art in general consists in making a journey, I would say. Making a journey, above all, in a very literal sense. The act of traveling from one place to another. And this act of traveling, which is always often walking in nature, this act of traveling is often very physical. You can see Helen walking in deep snow, you can see her walking in the sand on the beach, you can see her walking in water, on rocks, etc. In the film Perpetuum Mobile, which is part of this exhibition, Helen is traveling and walking quite a lot in forests, in fields, in deserts, and sometimes the landscape is really beautiful. It's quite dramatic. But even so, for me, when you see her videos, it's very clear that the act of traveling itself is what matters, much more than the destination of the journey. So the act of traveling itself is really of prime importance, I believe. And maybe I realized that when I watched another video by Helen, which is called Image of the Road, that she made in 2013. This time, in this video, Helen is traveling by car. She travels by car on one road, which is the E40, a road that goes through France, Germany, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, among other countries, and just this one road that goes through different countries, and Helen did that journey for 55 years. Days. That's enough to travel these countries. And in this video, you don't see her. You don't see Helen, but you see the road itself all the time. And what is fascinating is that road is a big line. In a way, it's a long line that indicates a path. And in a way, this long line, this long path has just to be followed. You take the E40 and you end up in another part of the world. So the itinerary, the route of the journey is determined by that path, by that road, the E40. And in a way, Helen decided to just follow that line, that road. And as a consequence, as she's filming the journey from the car, the road, as a consequence of just following that path, well, what is captured in the video and also in the photographs is the landscape, but not chosen because of its beauty or the landscape chosen because it's picturesque. It's just landscape that is recording in the video. It's just the landscape that happens to be there, along that line. And it's the same for the sounds of that video. The soundtrack of the video is the sounds of the radios that are picked up along that road. So things that just happen to be there. And I think that makes it quite clear that very often Helen's art is guided by procedures. There are procedures like following that road which are determined before they are performed. And so when these procedures, like driving along that road doing that action, when these procedures are being performed, when there are no choices to be made. You know, on the moment, there is no room for inspiration when these actions are being performed. And as a result, attention could be drawn entirely, completely on the act itself, on the act of performing an action. So, if Helen's art, in Helen's art, the making a journey is often very literal, you know, a walking, driving. It is also increasingly metaphorical, I guess. We have this idea of making a journey as a process, and as a process that has to be made, and one could almost say a process that we have to go through, that Helen has to go through step by step. And as Helen has explained herself, it could be seen as an act of mourning. If we think of these different actions which are performed in Helen's work, I find it really interesting to see the variety of these actions, and maybe the different scales of these acts, these processes. If we take Perpetual Mobile, she walks across countries such as Lebanon or Uzbekistan, so you have a sense of long distances. But in other videos, and I'm thinking here of Fragment and Trace that was made in 2015, we are dealing here in much smaller distances if we think of making a journey. In Fragment and Trace, Helen, for example, walks in the water in a very small canal, very narrow, very straight, and this canal is a straight line through fields, so she walks very slowly. Or we see her in the same video walking in a landscape that is entirely covered with snow, so very white, and we see her slowly walking and making a trace, a black trace, you know, in that landscape. So very different scales in terms of journeys. But also we can think also of the different speeds at which these actions are executed, the speeds of the journeys. The pace of these journeys can be very slow sometimes. So not when she's in the car on the E40, obviously, but sometimes she would walk in the water, she would walk in the snow, she would walk in the sand, or in a soil that is very humid and heavy, and that's very slow. There is even one scene in Fragment and Trace when we see Helen progressing, kneeling in the snow, and where she's planting some wooden sticks in the snow, and she takes the time to measure the distance between these sticks. So it's a very, very slow progression in the snow. And it's maybe these kind of very slow journeys, these very slow progressions, that made me think that Helen's work probably revolves around, for a big part, about how the process, the action, is experienced, how the process that is executed is made tangible. In a way, and for that Helen calls a lot to the senses. I believe there is this really beautiful scene in Fragment and Trace where Helen is again in a white landscape because it's covered with snow. She's all dressed in black. She's having this white board on her knees, and she has a pomegranate, and she cuts that pomegranate with a knife, and you see the red red juice of the fruit dripping, you know, on the white board, and it's just like incredibly beautiful, you know, in that black, otherwise black and white landscape. And I think it's this kind of contrast, like here with colors, but it's this kind of contrast which give substance to colors often, or to textures in her videos, and or to materials. Let me give you just two examples. This time in the video called Memory Theatre, when at one point you can see there is a close-up of Helen's hand on a vase, which is made of glass, and you can see it's night, so it's very dark, but you can see very clearly the vase and the hand, because it's near a log fire and it's on a beach. You know, so many things visually happening here, many contrasts, and in the same video, then you will see at one point Helen planting small sticks in the sand in the desert. This time, daylight under a big bright sun. You know, in the same work. So you have these contrasts within these works, which are extremely powerful. So if we think of all that, all these ideas, I think all that can be epitomized in one scene, in one action that consists in Helen feeling with her feet in the water that you imagine very cold, so and filling buckets with water. She did that. She performed that action in a video, that is called Memory Theatre. She also performed this action live in Folkestone in 2017. So she fills buckets with water as if, in a way, she wanted to empty the sea, because she fills the buckets again and again. Of course, it's impossible, but as if she wanted to empty the sea. And then, after doing this action repetitively, you know, again and again, suddenly that's the end. That's the end of that ritual. She throws the water in the sun, you know, with that ceremony. There is nothing grand at the end. It's just like getting back the water in the sun with that ceremony, and that's just the end of the process. And I really like that. And I think that's all that makes Helen's art so fascinating. The tangible process without a useful result that we have so often, the journey without a destination, you know, and the act for itself, the act that is repeated and becomes a ritual. Thank you very much.